Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Today we are back for another animation analysis video. And ladies and gentlemen, the day is finally upon us. I am so incredibly excited that today we get to take a look at the brand new Part 2 9th anniversary animations, all of which come from easily my favorite Dragon Ball thing probably ever. Dragon Ball Superhero, baby. Oh man, I am really excited to take a look at these. Obviously, in this video, we are first going to take a look at the Gammas, and then we are going to take a look at Gohan Beast a little bit later in the day. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Now, unfortunately, because I am recording these videos so early on, no one has gotten a comparison video up at the time of this recording. So if I do find one before this video goes up or after, I'll try and throw a link in the description or in the comments down below. I know that our boy iKevinX is working on one for Gohan Beast, so that's why I'm filming the Gamma one first. Regardless, though, let's go ahead and hop into the animations here. So, as per usual, we are going to watch through these one time full on full speed, and then we are going to watch them on the slow-mo. Now, regarding the Gammas, right? This is obviously the Carnival unit of this celebration, and I will say, I do think it is a little bit unfortunate that these guys ended up being a Carnival LR. And I don't mean that, like, oh, you know, it's unfortunate that their anniversary or something like that, because I love the Gammas. They are honestly some of my favorite characters in Dragon Ball, and not to mention, right, they're just really cool. So, I am all for them being an anniversary unit. I have absolutely no problem with that. In fact, I welcome it. However, I do think that, unfortunately, these guys do suffer from a little bit of Carnival LR syndrome, which I've talked about in a couple of other videos, and I'll kind of get more into it once I obviously dissect these guys. But unfortunately, I kind of feel as though a lot of the time these Carnival units end up getting a little bit shafted, right? Like, it's so weird because it's not like these animations are bad by any stretch of the imagination, right? I think if you're thinking that I'm going to say that they're bad, don't think that, because it ain't true. They're certainly not bad animations by any stretch of the animation, or, haha, funny, any stretch of the imagination. I think that they look good, in fact. It's just, I feel like they could still look a lot better, especially if they weren't a Carnival unit, because a lot of the time with some of the minute details and just overall in general, when you look at a unit's complete package for their animations, it feels like a lot of the time I say these things when it comes to Carnival units. So let's go ahead and hop into these guys' animations. They do have quite a bit to look at here, but obviously that's because they technically transform. By the way, as per usual, I do want to preface this video with this. I am by no means an animation professional. I'm not an animator or anything like that. I just look at these animations for fun. I look at these all the time, and not to mention look at the PNGs that make them up. So I have a pretty good idea of what makes a good Dokkan animation. Now, let's go ahead and get into it here. Obviously, for the beginning, we have the 12 key and the 18 key for the untransformed form of the Gammas. First of all, we have a great shot here with the boys, obviously, kind of in the beginning. Again, I feel like a broken record at this point, bro, but I swear Dokkan does this on purpose, where they kind of have like a pseudo intro sort of animation for the animations of a unit. But obviously, we get the boys stanced up, and I do like this little shot, right? Hello, Viral's theme. I like this shot of the fact that they kind of have this cut pretty well masked, right? You see that they have the camera kind of zoom in to the boys a little bit. I do like the change in expression as well from Gamma 2 there. But they do a good job of kind of disguising the fact that they're cutting from this shot of looking at them from the front to the back by having your eyes be distracted by the cut-in. So that is pretty cool. You have the boys fly forward, which I think is animated pretty good. And I do really like this shot of the both of them flying forward and punching. I will say, I do kind of wish that they would have finished the shot from this angle, because I think that would have been really cool, rather than having it kind of be from a side angle. I do like that little bit of an impact frame there, but yeah, as you can see, right, it kind of just continues from the side, which I don't think is bad by any means, right? I still think that this animation looks good, right? It's just I kind of would have preferred the other angle, but you do have them get hit away, which is really cool. You have Gamma 1 sort of teleport in, or I guess just move quickly, right? It isn't the best, like, teleport in, speed line kind of thing that I've seen for an animation, but it definitely gets the job done for sure. And we have him charge his blaster before we get a little bit of a zoom in and then fire. Now, I will say, one thing about these animations that I've noticed quite a bit when looking over the Gammas, and again, I'll point it out as we get to it, but I swear there are tons of instances where they're not very expressive, or they kind of just have the same stable look on their face. Now, if this is how it is in the movie, then fine. I guess that's how it is in the movie, right? But I swear that they were so much more expressive than this. Like, obviously, Gamma 2 is certainly the one who's a little bit more expressive than Gamma 1, but in the final fight, both of them were kind of going a little crazy. So, you know, I would think that this would be a little bit more expressive looking, rather than, you know, basically just having him sort of just have the same facial expression. Regardless, though, I will say it is nice to see, obviously, the cape flapping in the background. That is a nice little detail. And the blast actually does look pretty good. It looks a little bit weird from this angle, right? It almost kind of looks like a blowtorch, like this. But it is kind of weird, but I think it's just the angle that they're trying to get, right? I think the thing that makes it so weird here, too, is the bit of perspective and how long the blast is, right? I guess maybe if you were looking at it like this from this angle, it would technically look like this, but as you can see, right, it looks like it's very short at the moment. Like, it doesn't really look like it's gone much bigger than this, right? And again, even here, it really doesn't look like it's gone that much farther, right? Like, it's not that close to the ground to sell max. But then, in one foul swoop, right, it's now super close, and then it eventually bonks the enemy, right? I think it might be a matter of perspective of, like, oh, if you're looking at a blast like this from above, it would kind of look like this. But this feels a little bit janky to me, because especially in the time that passes in between the blast extending and the blast hitting the enemy, it doesn't feel like enough time to justify a believable, like, shot firing that far, in my eyes anyway. It just feels a little bit janky then when you watch it. However, I will say the impact looks amazing. I love the crazy effects that they have on display for the blast actually smacking into the enemy, which is really cool. And I love the lighting on Gamma 1 here. It looks fantastic, right? Obviously, with the front of him being a lot more brighter, you can kind of see it on the top of his chrome dome there, right? Looks pretty good. I definitely love the lighting in this scene a lot. And we then transition into this awesome card art. By the way, I know I talked about this in a recent video. I forget what character it was, but these guys are kind of, oh, I think it was Gogeta. These guys are kind of doing that same thing where it looks like the card art shakes really weirdly compared to normal. I'm wondering if it's just because it doesn't have, like, that gray background that it usually has, and they actually just have the card art's, like, straight up background. But funny enough, I swear most of the time when this happens, I see the same sort of errors occur. Funny enough, the white is not actually lined up. I'm thinking that this might just be an issue with the video, right? Like last time when we were looking at Gogeta, we saw that issue with the Twitter video where Gogeta was, like, disconnected from the bottom of the screen. As you can see, the white lines do not match up, right, with the edges of where they should be, right? Obviously, even though it's moving around rapidly, it shouldn't be too small for the frame there, right? It doesn't even reach to the ends on, like, any of the edges. So I'm gonna assume that, again, that's just a problem with the video. But if you look right here, right, let's go back to that shot from before. It's so weird because sometimes in Dokkan, shots can look kind of pixelated, right? But they look a little bit more fuzzy most of the time like this, and not like hard actual pixels. Dude, oh my gosh. Look at the actual, like, squares that you can see on this shot. I don't know. It's really weird, and I swear most of the time this type of thing happens when it is like the ones where the card art looks weird in the part where it shakes like this. I don't know why this is such a consistent thing. It's not anything like insane, but it's definitely something that I want to point out. And funny enough, I feel like most of the time when this happens, a little sound effect of the card shaking, like the, you know, like sound effect, sounds a little bit off. And funny enough, if you listen to the audio in this video, it does sound a little bit off to me. So, I don't know, kind of interesting there. But we have this really cool close-up shot, bro. He looks so funny. Look at him, Gamma 2, obviously close up to the camera. I love the expressiveness, and especially with this shot, right? I think this is a shot that you can tell they did do a very good job of kind of emulating that CGI style, right? It looks really, really good, right? Obviously, if we go back a little bit, right, and have it move, you know, forward, it looks pretty close to the movie, I would say, right? Like, stylistically, it looks really good. Even when they kind of cut back here, which I wish there was a little bit more of a transition in between this, like maybe one more. But even here, right, it looks a little bit squished almost for some reason. But I swear, like, if you would, like, screenshot this and crop this, somebody would just think that this is a screenshot from the movie. So they definitely did a good job with that. But obviously, we have Gamma 2 flip around. And I like that they actually have him flip before, of course, he does the rider kick, which is a super cool thing to include in here, right? We have the little twing before the fire explodes, right? I really, really like this too, right? Having the fire kind of form initially before then having that kind of be in the middle and having the effects come off of the edge, right? That is really, really cool. I love the way that this looks. The effects on this are awesome. And again, the lighting as well on Gamma 2. It's kind of hard to see it because obviously there's so much fire and, you know, all these other shenanigans going on here. But by golly, the lighting on him, right? If we look at like the edge right there too, all of that is really, really well done as well. Obviously, it's kind of hard to see because of all the effects. There you can see it a little bit better. But yeah, it still looks really, really good. The fire looks awesome. And I like as well how they also kind of like emphasize his boot there, right? Like you can see it kind of like is swirling specifically around his shoe, which is awesome. You have him pass by the camera, and I think that this is a perfect transition between scenes, right? Having him fly by and immediately, right, coming out the other side of the frame, right? That looks awesome. I love the shading as well on this section too. It looks really, really good. Yeah, so then of course the kick explodes, which is awesome against Cell Max, right? Flying downward, which is really, really cool. And you have it kind of linger there for a fat minute before it launches off the enemy. I will say, let me watch this in full-time speed again. The only thing is I don't feel like the the finish of the kick. Yeah, it doesn't really feel like he like pushes the enemy away, right? It kind of just feels like he flies away from Cell Max rather than actually like shoving him down with his foot. I don't know, maybe that was the intention, but it definitely feels a little bit strange. Regardless though, you have the enemy bonk into the ground with a little bit of an explosion, and that is actually the end of the 12 key super attack. I will say it is very cool. I'm gonna really, really be looking forward to see when somebody gets the anime versus Dokkan comparison for this, because it's going to be interesting to see what shots they combine from what sections of the fight to, you know, obviously kind of make these animations up. And it is cool for this one, right, that obviously basically what they did is they had the Gammas do a double attack in the beginning, right, with the both of them there, and then they had Gamma 1 do the blast against him, and then basically the card art just immediately cuts to Gamma 2. So they use the card art in a really good way here because it kind of makes it feel like a lot more of a natural transition between both of them kind of beating up Cell Max, whereas like if they just cut from, you know, Cell Max being on the ground after getting blasted here to then, you know, Gamma 2 coming down, it would have felt a little bit weird. And not to mention, obviously, he gets launched into the ground again, so maybe they would have had to have him, like, slam into Cell Max already on the ground for this case. But I digress. Still very, very cool. And let's move on to the 18 key. So we again have the boys readying up, right? I love this little bit here where Gamma 1's like, all right, get ready. Very cool. We have a very serious Gamma 2 here, which I love the animation on this part, I will say. Again, it looks very, very well animated. And I love the, like, again, very stylistically superhero. They do a very good job of making it look like the CGI from the film. I want to see when he lifts the blaster there. How does that look? Okay, yeah, see that? Again, that's why whenever I look at these animations in slow-mo, I always kind of take it with a grain of salt and be like, it looks better in the full motion. Because, like, comparing this to the full motion, right? Bam, that looks super smooth, right? Obviously in the full speed. But then if we look at it in the slow-mo, it feels a little bit more choppy, right? So there are definitely some things that, for sure, right, I think obviously look better in full motion, and obviously that's important to keep in mind when we're obviously going through this. But all things considered, of course, when we're taking a look at these animations, it would be like next to impossible to look at them in the full speed continuously. Anyhow, we then move on to a section that I feel like is kind of to be honest with you. We have Gamma 2 fly in here, and this again could be a reference to the movie directly, that he basically isn't moving at all. But I don't know, this definitely feels like they're literally just sliding the PNG across the screen, right? Obviously the cape is moving, so there is that. And a little bit of movement there, right, when Gamma 2 fires the shot, right? I feel like there is a little bit of visual recoil with him, right? I mean, it's more so on his arm, I guess, because you see his arm kind of move like that. But if this is how it is in the movie, then I guess it's fine. But maybe it's just because my Dokkan, like, centric brain, you know, just sees this and goes, oh, it looks a little bit stinky because it looks like an old essay where they're just kind of sliding the PNG across the screen. One thing I will give this animation, though, is that the lighting is impeccable, right? In these sections where it's the in-between, right, they have Gamma 2 very dark. And then in the sections where the blast is beginning to charge and fire, they have him actually glowing a little bit like this, which is really cool. You can notice it if we go back and look through the whole animation, right? He begins to get a little bit brighter as he's beginning to fire the blast, which is pretty cool. Nice little attention to detail there for sure. And we obviously have it explode against the enemy. We then have Gamma 1 fly in. There is a really interesting shot in here. So this is kind of interesting, and this will also be more of a thing in like the Gohan Beast animation analysis, but I think it's also worth mentioning it here, where obviously this is kind of a transition of assets, right, where you can see Gamma 1 is getting really close to the camera before they then transition to this shot here. I feel like this is another example of Dokkan, unfortunately, kind of reaching their limit in terms of what they can do in terms, I'm saying in terms a lot, but it'll make sense in a second, of the quality of the animations, right? Because when it comes to this shot, I don't think it looks bad at all, right? I think it looks nicely animated of Gamma 1, you know, like obviously flying up like this, right? And coming up towards the screen. My problem is, right, and obviously it looks a bit better once they transition into the main asset, but you can still see a little bit of like the, you know, blurriness, right, on the edges of, you know, Gamma's mouth and on the eyes, right, even on like the, you know, buckles on him and stuff like that, right? You can kind of see the pixels a little bit. I think the Dokkan has definitely reached its sort of like plateau when it comes to the actual like quality of the assets that they can use, because at this point they're trying to use such good quality assets that it comes out as bad quality, which I know it doesn't really seem like it makes sense, but it's because obviously these, like, you know, this technology that they use for the essays wasn't really made for these high quality of animations, and obviously they have pushed it, you know, far beyond its limits to make these animations look as good as possible. But sometimes there are parts when I notice that I'm like, man, if only Dokkan upgraded their engine, right, like the back end of what makes the game work, these animations would look even better, and not from the perspective of like how they're actually animated, but the, like, you know, actual image quality of them. Because we would not be getting things like this where, you know, on the screen you can see this asset that looks really good, but obviously it's held back by the fact that, you know, you can literally see the rigid edges of the pixels, because obviously, you know, the technology is too old to keep up with, you know, the quality of, you know, images and, you know, stuff that we expect in modern animation. So, again, that type of thing is like, it's hard to quantify because I don't think it's like a bad thing, and it doesn't make me like, you know, that's not like any docked points for the Gamma specifically or anything like that. It's just something I always like to bring up when I see it in these animations, because obviously it's just interesting to note that, you know, Dokkan has kind of pushed this to its limits, I feel like, and even far beyond, for sure. How Dragon Ball of them to break your limits. But, right, I just think it's kind of interesting, so I do wonder if they will ever, like, update the back end of the game to be able to make some of this stuff look even better. That would take a lot of work, though, as far as I understand, so I don't know if they'll ever do it, but regardless, though, moving on, we have a really nice little bit of rotoscoping with Gamma 1 here, right? Obviously, having him get a little bit closer to the camera with this nice shot, right? And then they have it kind of turn around. Super well done. And again, in full motion, it'll look even better with him turning like this. Dude, the rotoscoping is so good there. Oh my gosh, they peaked. And obviously then having the enemy come around on the other side. Such a cool shot right there. I love the cinematography, right? The camera work at play. It is kind of unfortunate, I will say. This is another certified stinky sprite moment, because obviously it is just the perspective, right? If they had a better way to have the enemies on the screen, this would look a little bit better. But obviously this looks so weird, because, like, even though obviously the implication is that Cell Max is far away, he really doesn't look that far away. Like, it kind of looks like Gamma 1's just looking at like an ant or like a minifigure right now, right? And obviously, you know, as it, you know, Cell Max's size doesn't really change for this entire scene, even though Gamma 1 is technically getting closer to him, and obviously, you know, to the viewer then getting a little bit smaller, but Cell Max still remains the same size, if not even a little bit bigger here, which I guess then makes sense for the continuity a little bit more. But I don't know, I think you can understand where I'm coming from, that the perspective just looks very strange. And again, I don't think that that's the animation's fault. I think that that's the sprite's fault. Let's actually see that in full motion. Yeah, look at that spin, bro. Oh, that is gas. Let's see the full thing one more time. Dude, that is such a nice shot. Oh my gosh. I love whenever characters spin and stuff like that. Just so cool. All right. So then obviously we have Gamma 1 blast him. I like the lighting there, right? Obviously having him basically explode. It is interesting. Did I just notice the asset transition there, or was I tripping? Yeah, no, it did. You can see that this asset is a lot more high quality, and then this one, obviously, you can see the kind of thicker black lines for the edges at play there, right? A lot more akin to Dokkan's sprites, rather than, you know, the, you know, higher quality assets that they use in essays. But to be fair, this is on screen for not that long, and you're also not really paying attention to it. So I guess if they were going to do something like this and use it, this was definitely a good spot, because you're not really going to notice it unless you're really keeping an eye out for it, right? Also, I just realized the blast looks really weird. Like, the explosion is fine, but let me go back, right? So he shoots him like this, right? Which makes sense. But then it's almost like it's like a continuous beam that then fires off. And it's also weird then seeing the little bit of the edge, like, not really aimed at him. And it's also kind of still shooting off a little energy. I don't know. It looks a little bit weird. Anyhow, after this, we then have the enemy fly forward, right? Which we then transition into the card art once again, right? We have this. I love that they included this, because this is one of my favorite scenes with the Gammas in the movie. We obviously have these shots of where Gamma 1 was basically distracting. It's kind of funny, right? This could have also been a standby skill, to be 100% honest with you, because it kind of serves the same purpose. But obviously it makes way more sense for the standby skill to be the core breaker. Regardless, though, obviously we have this awesome shot of Gamma 1 standing in front of the blast when he then swoops off to the side. And of course, the whole time Gamma 2 was charging this huge blast, which, by the way, I love. Oh my gosh, dude, they cooked on this part for sure. So right, obviously it just kind of looks like a circle here, which is how it looked in the movie, right? And I love, oh man, it just looks so good. The animation on the actual, like, key, right, that is coming off of the blaster, right? You can see at first it just kind of looks like a normal circle, but then it begins to change shape and kind of like move around to these little bit more random shapes, right? I definitely like that a lot. Again, obviously making the key feel more realistic. And then of course we get to this part where the energy is kind of like swirling around. That's a very cool shot, right? It is a little bit weird, I will say, because this shot is kind of like the implication that he's firing it, right? When that would be here. Maybe it's kind of like the anime thing that they do where it's like, you know, the character fires off the attack, and then they cut to the next shot, and then they haven't fired it off again, and then they fire it off immediately, and then they do that a couple times, so it's like, pa-choom, 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 you know, type of thing, right? Where it's like just them launching it a bunch of times rather than like different angles of it already, you know, being launched. Maybe that's what they were going for here, right? Because obviously this is clearly like he's shooting it, but then you cut to this scene and it's still, you know, being charged, where then this effect would be what we just saw moments ago. So I think that's probably what they were going for there. But yeah, either way though, he blasted off, and I love again the lighting, how dark Gamma 2 looks here, because obviously, you know, the light is in front of him, so that's really cool. And I love this little bit here too, dude. This shot right here. I don't know why, but this reminds me of Kingdom Hearts for some reason. When you walk away. So good. But yeah, obviously very, very cool with him firing off the blast. And then, of course, you get the actual explosion, right? With the smoke coming off of the blaster. And interestingly enough, this is another moment where they kind of change it from the movie or the source material to then make it like the character who's using the attack won. Because right after this scene, after Gamma 2 fires this giant blast, Cell Max jumps through the actual like blast. Funny enough, it's actually Cell Max's card art. Can we go back to that one? The one asset of Cell Max also has the same thing there too. When he jumps at him, where is it here? Yeah, this, right? Like this shot right here. This is the same pose that Cell Max has for his card art. Obviously, it's like slightly different, but you get the point that I'm getting at, right? This is how Cell Max looks in the movie when he's jumping through the blast that Gamma 2 just fired. So that's pretty cool that they, you know, kind of change it to, you know, sort of fit what they want to do with it a little bit more and have it be like the blast actually, you know, finish the enemy off or was successful. So that's pretty cool. I like that a lot. All right. So we now move on to the standby skill activation animation. Man, this video is going to be really long. Holy cow. We are only up to the standby skill activation already. So I like this shot a lot. Obviously, of Gamma 2 kind of, you know, he's already confident that he's going to use the core breaker, right? The two boys talking here, right? And the Kate moving very, very nicely on Gamma 1 as well. Then, of course, Gamma 1 reacting accordingly, like, no, you can't do it, right? You'll be destroyed, right? And he's like, I've already made up my mind. And so, yeah, right here, right? So I think the animation on this section is just fine. I really like this part as well too, when obviously he begins to charge the core breaker. And I love this little shot where they kind of back the camera away, having all of the energy spewing out, right? Super cool shot, and I love the effects on this. They did such a good job. The aura as well looks fantastic, right? Obviously Gamma 2 readying up and then shooting up also looks really, really good here too. Interestingly enough, with this, oh yeah, and I forgot, it also leads into this amazing shot here of Gamma 2 flying up towards the sky. Love the effects on this. And then obviously going above the planet here, which directly leads into later when the standby skill is fully charged. But yeah, very, very cool. Obviously having him be up there, right? And really cool, because I thought that that was going to be the end when I saw it initially. I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. But then it's awesome that they also have Gamma 1 looking at him from the ground, right? I really, really like that bit of perspective there. That's super cool. And then, of course, Gamma 1 gets serious and ready to fight. I will say, it is kind of weird going from the shadow here. I don't know. I would assume it's not like that in the movie and the shadow comes on a little bit more naturally. I think they could have benefited from having like this asset kind of be like a half shadow and then this one be a little bit more of like the full shadow just to kind of introduce it a little bit more, but it still looks okay. Now, I will say this animation is honestly a really great standby activation, right? I think the whole thing all the way through looks really nice. The effects are on point, right? The animation looks good. Interestingly enough, I feel like this is another example here, funny enough, of sort of what we were talking about where Dokkan's kind of pushing their limits, because you can see the, like, you know, jagged edges on Gamma 2 here, when realistically, obviously this would look a lot better. Like, obviously it looks nice visually in terms of how the animation plays out, but obviously I'm talking about the image quality specifically. Now, the one thing that I will say that really stinks about this and I don't know why they decided to do this, is that they do not move their mouths when they're talking for this one. You can see, obviously, this is the standby, so it's voiced, right? Gamma 2 does not move his mouth here, right? Gamma 1, then subsequently responding, only has gritted teeth and is also not talking, right? I don't know, man. It's like, it's such a mixed bag because it's like, right, even here, right? Obviously the mouth should be moving. It's such a mixed bag because I feel like on one hand, it's not that big of a deal. But then on the other hand, it's like, why would they not animate the mouths moving? What's the point of not animating them, you know, in full motion? I don't understand why. What's the deal, right? Like, it's such a simple thing to do, and it's the main animation where they're talking, right? Obviously, the appeal of the standby skills and the active skills and the intros and stuff like that is that the characters are actually speaking during them, right? So why would you not have the lip flaps move accordingly? Even when in some other animations, they give characters lip flaps for what they would be saying when they don't actually speak. In some of the super attack animations for different characters, there's shots where they actually move their mouth when they're talking, right? And there's no audio because obviously it's a super attack animation. Now these guys, for the most part, right, I think throughout this whole thing, even when they've said stuff, it's kind of just been like, you know, whatever, right? They're not really like moving their mouths like this, right? But even here, actually, here's a good example, right? Like, what? They animate his mouth moving here for the super attack, right? You can see that he's actually talking, right? He's enunciating his words. Does Gamma 1 talk in this section? No, because I was going to say, I think that's the only time that he talks. Yeah, so like, I don't know. You're telling me that they animated mouth flaps for that, but they didn't animate it for the part where the characters are actually speaking to each other? I don't know. Just such a weird little conundrum. Let me know in the comments what you think about it, because I'm honestly not sure how to feel about it. I'm very mixed on the subject. I just kind of wish they would do it for everything, I guess. Like it's like, pick a lane, bro. Either do it or don't do it. I don't know. Anyhow, let's move on to the 12 key and the 18 key super attack for now just Gamma 1, obviously being in the standby mode. I will say, as unfortunate as it is, it kind of seems like a lot of the time the standby skill super attacks kind of get shafted a little bit, where I think what Dokkan's kind of thought process on this is that like, oh, you're not really going to be seeing these animations for that long, so we're not going to put too much time into it, when, you know, most of the time, whatever is the result of the standby skill, whether it be a finish skill or whether it be a transformation, right? Usually that is the big moment for the character anyway, so it makes more sense to put your resources into that animation or subsequent animations, right? Rather than the thing that you're only going to be seeing for a couple turns when they're on the standby. But it is still kind of unfortunate because it's almost like the mentality that they have for the giant and like great ape animations, unless you're Orange Piccolo, which is still, I think, are a little bit short. Like they could be longer if it wasn't a giant form one, but they're still really good, obviously. But a lot of the giant characters, right, obviously have super short animations when they actually are giant, and I think it's kind of the same mentality that applies here. It's like, oh, well, it's only a temporary thing, so, you know, you're not going to see it that often. Anyhow, for the 12 key super attack, we obviously have Gamma 1 fly up, and it is kind of interesting because these have a ton of parallels, right? You can see that this is the exact same thing as the regular 12 key, right, with obviously Gamma 1 stance up in the exact same way, right? If we go back to this shot right here, which makes sense, I guess, right? It's basically just the same attacks except, you know, without Gamma 2 because he's now on standby. But I don't know, man. I kind of wish that they would do something a little bit more original for it. As we go through here, there'll be some little bit of differences, right? And sometimes little references to the other, like, sections of the super attack are cool, but here, right, it is the same thing, right, where it is basically just the punch, except without Gamma 2. However, it is from a little bit of a different angle this time, right, as you can see there, where instead of being directly from the side, it's kind of this, like, corner angle almost. And then, of course, we get another side shot that is a little bit different of Gamma 1 then punching the enemy away, right? And I do actually like, I wanted to point out, yeah, this shot right here, right? I love it when they do this, when they kind of elongate the character a little bit. Again, because it's like this part of their body is closer to the camera than this one. I love this a lot, this bit of perspective on the camera angle there. Very, very nice job. But yeah, so after the punch lands for Gamma 1, right, we then obviously have him come up, ready his feet, and then bam, kick the enemy down, which I will say, I feel like the punch and then this kick too don't really have a ton of impact on them. They're okay, but they're definitely not, like, great. I do like that he does recoil a little bit, but the enemy flying away doesn't feel, like, convincing enough for me. And then this one, oh man, like, I guess the cape would kind of be like this. The edge would still be flapping in the wind a little bit. But we were talking about the sliding PNG before for that shot of Gamma 2. By golly, look at this nonsense, bro. This is literally just a PNG that they're sliding forward. There is absolutely no excuse for this in 2024 Dokkan. They could have at least animated the cape flapping in the wind, bro. Come on now. But yeah, this is pretty cool, though. I actually do really like this transition, right? Because I feel like a lot of the time, they would just cut to then the punch, right? Or him winding up to the punch. But no, instead, they actually have it zoom in to Gamma 1 readying up the punch here, right? With his arm a lot cocked back. And I love this crazy angle where his arm is, you know, back before then throwing it forward like this, right? That is super cool, right? With the twist, right? They kind of did this with Goku in the, like, Super Saiyan Trio animation, but I feel like it's actually executed quite a bit better here, where it's sort of this, like, roundabout swing around of the character where they sort of punch them and then their hand is in their gut and they kind of spin them around like this, right? I really, really like the way that this looks. I think it's actually very well done. It is a bit of a shame with, again, another Stinky Sprite moment, right? We're going to watch this in full-time speed, too. Another Stinky Sprite moment where the character is so big that you can't really see Gamma 1's expression for part of this, right? Like, especially there, right? When Cell Max's face is, like, right in the camera. But I think this is very well executed in terms of the spin, right? The initial hit, the loop, the little bit of slow, and then the follow-through, right? Looks really, really good. I think they did a very good job with that, for sure. It is nice to see at least that the most of this is just kind of original stuff compared to the 12 key, right? Obviously, they had that little reference in the beginning and then a similar-esque shot to, you know, both of them punching together and then that shot from the side. But I guess at least the rest of it is obviously different. But I don't know. It's like a very weird mixed bag for me where it's like I kind of like that they reference the original, but it would also be cool to get some more original animations, which is going to be very ironic when we get to the Gohan Beast video. But that's a bit of a different case. However, we now have the 18 key super attack. I did want to look. Is this shot? I don't think this shot is the same as this one. Is it? I can't get like a good transition between the things because with this little YouTube preview, it doesn't exactly take you where, you know, it like says that it will. No, okay, that's definitely not the same shot. It's just a little bit of like a darker shaded shot for Gamma 1. I just wanted to make sure if it was or not. Alright, so then we have him get real mad, right? We have him fly through, which, okay, so this shot again, right? Because obviously this is the shot that we were talking about before. It is slightly different at the tail end. It is kind of interesting that they just have him stand up here and then they already have him flying out from like the air. That is kind of weird. It's kind of weird that they don't have him like at least come up from the ground or like have a frame of him jumping up or something. Again, if this is how it was in the movie, then, you know, it is what it is, but it is kind of a little bit jarring, I will say. So yeah, because we were talking about this before. But this looks like a bit of a different angle. Let's see if we can get that exact shot. No, okay, it is exactly the same. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so then obviously, like, this was the spin from the initial 18 key, right? And obviously, it kind of then ends with the blast. But the cool thing about this version of it, right, is that obviously we still get that same spin, which looks really good. But then it cuts off right there, transitioning to, unfortunately, again, Stinky Sprite moment, where you can't really see what Gamma 1 is doing. But then we get a punch up, right, before we then get Gamma 1 coming up from behind to then give him a good old slap. And unfortunately, man, this stinks. Like, this shot looks really good right here. But man, dude, like, come on, bro. You can't even see half of it from this. You can't even see it because it's covered by Cell Max. I don't know. It's also a little bit interesting, too, because you can kind of see that he's getting ready for this attack here. And it is masked by the enemy sprite, right? But obviously then his arm is already out with a little bit of motion lines. This will be interesting to see how this looks against a non-giant form enemy. Because obviously you'll be able to see it a little bit better, but man, I don't know. I appreciate them trying to, like, make it canon, right? By, like, obviously having them fight Cell Max. But it's such a shame for what's supposed to be a showcase of a character's animations. Sometimes the animation is just straight up blocked by the enemy sprite. Like, I kind of wish they uploaded a version without the sprite, just so that you could see the full animations. Either way, though, I think the hit looks fine, right? I like the wind up to it. It's kind of funny that he slaps him rather than just punching him. But we then get a cut in from the card art with Gamma 1 charging up a blast, which looks really, really good, right? I believe, again, yeah, this is like a sort of alternate version, I guess you could say, where it's Gamma 1 firing that big blast rather than Gamma 2, because obviously, right, like this shot here of him charging it, right, and then zooming out to him being really far in the frame like this, right, is obviously a reference to this part here, where, you know, in the 18 key, right, it flies back, but obviously it was just a distraction, and then he flies away, right? It's kind of cool that it is sort of like, almost like an alternate timeline kind of thing. But anyway, the charging up of the blast, I will say, does look a little bit weird. I think that he looks okay here, but for some reason, they also, like, didn't animate the circle that's on the blaster. Like, if we go back here, right, you can see that there is a clear little bump on the blaster, right? Even looking at my, like, on my desk, I literally have a Gamma 1 and 2, the SH Figure Arts figures, and if I pull the blaster out of the holster, right, I can see that on the end, there is, interestingly enough, no, like, little notch like that. So, I don't know if that's in the movie and the figure forgot it, but I don't know. It's kind of weird that for the animation, they're a little bit inconsistent with drawing it, because obviously here, it's there, and then for this shot, it's not there, and I know you could kind of be like, oh, well, you know, it's this little thing right here. Well, not only is that not in the center of, you know, like, where it should be, but also, that looks a lot more to me like a little bit of, like, a glimmer of light on it, rather than, you know, like it being like part of the actual blaster, right? Maybe this is just a little bit of semantics, but obviously with this being an animation analysis video, you know, your boy has to point it out if he sees it. Now, unfortunately, with the part that comes next, right, when it comes to the charging of the blast, I actually think this is one of the more, like, weaker points of the essay for charging Gamma 1's blast, because I've seen them do this a lot better, but they literally just, like, spawn in, like, I don't know, slash give type beat, bro. The, like, effect here for having it just kind of, like, fade in, which doesn't really make sense. And the blaster has looked so good throughout this entire time, so it's so weird to me that, like, they would kind of fumble it here and make it look so weird for that initial shot. But it's weird because then, like, it transitions into it looking decent, but the effects just kind of fade in to then form it. I don't know, man. It's a little bit weird, if I'm being honest with you. Like, it was definitely better in the parts where they were charging the blaster earlier in the essay. Just having the effect fade in rather, feels so cheap and almost like older Dokkan-esque. I do like how Gamma 1 does get a little bit more like red in shading, with obviously the red blast being in front of him, right? You can see that kind of tone there. And not to mention, all being said, with the funny fading assets, I do like that all of them kind of form into the ball like this, even if it is just kind of fading in. That is a pretty cool little effect there. And then of course the blaster fires off, right? Kaboom, right, with him lifting his arms up. I do like that it has a little bit of recoil. And of course we then get this cool shot where obviously the camera is sort of in front of it, or well, I guess behind it before it's then in front of it, and then it collides with enemy. Now we move on to the final animation, obviously the one that everybody was waiting for, of course, this being the finish skill for the Gammas. Now, with this, I do like that they kind of have this be a continuation of the initial standby, right? Where obviously he goes up into space and you can see him up there. Obviously, then we get Gamma 1 looking at him from the ground. But I like that they directly continue it for the sake of the Dokkan animation. Obviously, this is like kind of how it is in the movie, because, you know, like they do some stuff in between the time that he's charging it. But I don't know. I just like the bit of the transition there. It's pretty cool. But yeah, so then we have the power exploding, and I gotta say, the effects in this entire section look amazing, right? Like, there is not a single effect here that doesn't look really cool. I love the sort of like flame effect, obviously, again, directly taken from the movie, that is surrounding Gamma 2's body, right? That looks really, really good. I like the kind of just like crazy aura that he has, like shooting out everywhere, right? Obviously the circle sort of surrounding him before it just blows up, because obviously it's kind of going insane right now, right? Obviously he's unleashing all of his power at once. All the effects look insane here, right? I love this part as well, where obviously he dashes forward here, and you can see him just a little bit in there before then obviously they use a cover of the, you know, like energy that's shooting off of him to transition the camera down here, and obviously him breaking through the atmosphere there looks really cool. We then of course have Gamma 1, right? Notice that he's coming down, which is really cool. And again, continuing off of the shot from before, you can see that asset right there, let's go back to the standby skill. That asset right there is literally this one. Like, it's the exact same asset. So that is pretty cool, a little bit of continuity again to kind of like continue the standby skill. And we then obviously have the sky open up, which looks amazing, right? They did a really good job animating this, I feel like, with having it open. And then, of course, him coming down looks awesome, right? I really, really like the effects that they have on this. Looks so good. Obviously, then smacking into the enemy's back. I will say, this shot is really well done, but in the movie, this is a lot more blue. Like, there is blue surrounding him everywhere in this shot. So it's a little bit weird that they decided to, like, make the outline, or not the outline, but, like, the background, I guess, like, more brown? I don't know, it's a little weird, because Gamma 2 himself looks good here, right? The explosion here looks amazing as well. See, like this, right? Obviously, then, this is a shot that's like a couple seconds later in the movie. But even in that shot before, when he's flying down, right? There's a lot more blue surrounding him than just, like, his aura, basically. So why would they make the outline brown? The whole thing should be the blue colors that look exactly like this shot right here. I don't know why they decided to do that. It's a little bit of a weird decision, to be honest with you. I don't know if it's trying to just have some context to, like, it being the sky or something. I don't know. It just looks really weird. Obviously, like, the little, like, tan sections there is just supposed to be, like, speed lines, but why would they make this part and this part not, like, darker blue? You know, where, like, here, right, when we go to this section, right, it's the mix of light blues and dark blues. I don't know. Very, very weird decision on that one, but I think this looks fine. They could have maybe even had a little bit more, like, crazy zoom, right? Because he does kind of, like, pulse a little bit, but I feel like in the movie it was a little bit more crazier looking. However, this explosion, dude, Dokkan was in their bag with this explosion effect. Holy cow, dude. Look at this. You have the little ring, right? You have the impact frame there. Chwing! Dude, the impact frame is crazy. So cool. And then obviously the explosion flying out there. Of course, then cutting to the shot of Gamma 2 struggling, which this looks really good. This might be my favorite bit in the whole thing, right? Obviously with him kind of like gritting his teeth there, right? That looks so good. And then they have this section with obviously him blasting down at Cell Max, with Cell Max kind of like holding his arm up like that. And I love too that they have it be a little bit blurry for some of the shots, because obviously that makes a lot more sense in context, right, with obviously like how insane this impact is, right? Really, really cool attention to detail. And I love too that they have this black and white frame before they then transition into this huge explosion where obviously he is, I'm tripping up over my words here, unleashing even more power before obviously like the final explosion begins to occur, right? Before this massive explosion happens, which looks awesome. I love that they obviously transition it to orange, right? For him slamming down into the enemy, right? And of course the shout looks really good at the end with him disintegrating. That shot looks amazing with obviously changing it into sort of like the black and white look, right? Very anime-esque. Very, very cool. Super well done. Again, another thing of Dokkan quality as well, by the way. After he like kind of fades away, you can see the background has these like artifacts, right? The little bit of pixelation, where this should just kind of be like this yellow white color rather than having these little like dots here. That's just a result of the PNG being a little bit like zoomed in, or you know, a little bit stinky. But yeah, the explosion at the end looks fantastic, right? Everything looks great here. I love the dust clouds, you know, obviously coming up against the camera there, you know, and again, the camera kind of getting a little bit blurred. Now, I will say there is one thing that people have seemingly been a little bit disappointed about this animation. Obviously, this is a really cool end shot, and this would work well for a KO screen, right? Obviously, having Gamma 1 look down at the, you know, like remains of Gamma 2, basically. But I know a lot of people were actually wanting like more of a KO screen, where, you know, it could be a bunch of different shots that they could do. They could do the end shot, right, like towards the end of the movie when, you know, Gamma 1 and Dr. Hedo are like standing over and holding Gamma 2's body, and then he like, you know, disintegrates and they get the little piece of the cape, right? They could definitely like have the smoke kind of pass by the screen and then transition to that, right? They could obviously have Gamma 2 laying there. They could have the section where, you know, Gamma 1 brings the body of Gamma 2 over to lay down next to Dr. Hedo, right? There's a bunch of different things that they could do for a KO screen. This I am willing to bet, because obviously these videos always go up before the data download because we get the animations via Twitter, you know, from the data download. Right, we then get to see like the quote-unquote full animations. So we will have to see if they do add a KO screen to this, because a lot of the time when they post these Twitter videos, they don't add the KO screen. It's so weird what they pick and choose to. Like Future Gohan, right, from Worldwide, they showed it, right? Funny enough, Gohan Beast and Orange Piccolo, the end of the unit super attack, they show it, right? But there's been plenty of other units. A recent example, Gogeta from 9th Anniversary. He has a KO screen where the fire is kind of like, you know, going behind him before it gets a little bit darker. For, I think his 18 key is blue Gogeta, I'm pretty sure. Or no, maybe? I think it's for the 12 key. I don't remember, but regardless though, you know what I'm talking about. For that one, they didn't show that in the Twitter preview. Why? I don't know, because it looks cool, and there's no real difference between the ones that they show and that they don't show. It's just such a strange decision. I don't know. So maybe we'll see if we do end up getting a proper KO screen for the finish skill here, because I would think, especially with it being a finish skill, you know, the whole implication of that is that obviously it's supposed to be a KO. So you would think that, you know, it would have a KO screen. But all in all, with these animations, man. So, oh man, I'm a bit mixed, to be 100% honest with you, right? Because I think that I like these a lot, right? And I love the Gammas, right? So that certainly helps their case, right? And I love Superhero. But obviously, I need to be judging these animations fairly, right? And they are very good. There is no denying that, right? There are plenty of animations that I could see that have come out in recent time that are much worse looking than these guys. However, I feel like in some areas, they still look a little bit unpolished, and there's certain things that I kind of wish that they would have done, like, even obviously the standby skill animations are a little bit short, right? I feel like even the regular 12 key and 18 key animations feel a little bit short to me. Like, I feel like they could have been a little bit longer, especially in comparison to some of the animations from the Part 1 units, right? Those animations are like the whole movie, basically. So, as much as it pains me to say it, right, I feel like these guys, again, kind of suffer from a little bit of that, you know, Carnival syndrome, right? The Carnival LR syndrome, where their animations are good for the most part, right? Especially a lot more of the recent Carnival units, but there are just some small details about them that I feel like could certainly have been improved, and I almost feel like that if they were a Dokkan Fest, they could have looked even better than they already do now, because it feels like they just treat the Dokkan Fest better. Like when we were looking at Broly and Gogeta, right? I think that Broly's animations far eclipse Gogeta's, and Gogeta's are not bad by any stretch of the animation. And I said it again. The imagination. In fact, I think they look fantastic, but it's easy to see that Broly's are superior, right? I think that, you know, again, it's just kind of unfortunate because Gogeta is a Carnival unit. And the thing is, right, I also want you to understand when I'm saying this about these Carnival units, it's not because of the fact that they're a Carnival unit that they have worse animations, right? Because I feel like it's kind of the phrasing that I have to be clear with here, because technically that is like not the reason why, right? The reason why I say that about these Carnival units is because that's just the pattern that I have noticed, especially from doing these animation analysis videos for so long now. It really feels like that every time I look at one of these Carnival units, I see that they are a little bit lacking compared to their other animation compatriots, right? That is just kind of the results from the data that I have gathered, right? That's not my like bias towards carnivals or anything. In fact, I quite like carnival banners and carnival units. I think they're a lot of fun. But that is just kind of what I've noticed, excuse me, from doing these animation analysis videos for a while now, that it really seems like they just get a little bit less love than the other big boy units that, you know, these guys are supposed to be on the same tier as. So you can let me know in the comment section below how you feel about that. Again, I still think that these do look really good. They are very, very fun animations. I think that they did a super great job with the core breaker overall. Again, I think the only thing for me with the core breaker is like if the part where he's actually like diving down, right? Again, if it was more blue here surrounding him, again, I just don't know why they made it like brown around him, because it's not like that in the movie. Again, it's the same color scheme as what follows seconds later here, where it's all these different various blues playing on the screen. So I don't know why they decided to do that. It's so weird. I almost kind of wonder if it's just something with the video, but for that one, I'm thinking that probably not, unfortunately. But let me know what you think of these guys in the comments section below. I will still definitely be summoning for them because I think that they are really, really cool. And I definitely love the Gamma. So obviously finally getting this moment in Dokkan is awesome. Especially the fact that they are an anniversary unit, right? I do think that that is super cool because, boy, can I tell you, when I saw these guys on the big screen, I never, you know, I was like, yeah, Beast could be an anniversary unit, but I never thought that the Gammas would be. So this is honestly kind of awesome. Anyhow, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Again, don't forget to leave a like and a sub, and please let me know your thoughts on everything that we discussed in this video, because it's funny, I almost feel like people obviously are talking more about Beast animations and giving their thoughts on it, right, whether they like it or not about certain aspects of it, but I feel like not enough people are talking about these, so definitely let me know your thoughts in the comments. But without further ado, hope y'all have a fantastic day. Good luck if you are pulling for the Gammas or Gohan Beast, and I will see you in the next one. Dokkan Assets out. Peace.